Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Good. Maybe we have to go a little further back, it is probably about that time, to your childhood. And maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about young Yuri and Rotterdam back then.
Yeah, so it was a long time ago, let's say 41 years, about my birth. I remember Rotterdam as a place where you could explore the environment without being destroyed by a car. So that's where I learned to be entrepreneurial, right, on the streets and become street smart, close by to the central station. So that's my...
Close to Central Station, what was your first entrepreneurial activity? It's not the lemonade stall, I'm sure.
Yeah. So basically I was delivering newspapers. That's my first job. And then later on I was active in the auction of flowers and groceries in the Blijswijk.
Yeah.
It's very tough physical work.
Your parents suggested this to show you the true value of hard work?
Yes, because I was very lazy back then to a certain degree. So they said, okay, if you stay like this, you end up here, right? So become aware, yeah.
So after that sort of being thrown into hard work at a young age, you decided that maybe that wasn't for you, and you looked to the wonders of Erasmus University as your way out of manual labor.
Yeah, so it was a good decision. At first I studied econometrics, not economics. Later on business economics and marketing and strategy as specialization. I didn't like the financial courses, to be honest, so in that sense it was a big mistake.
Was that because you weren't good at the financial courses, or you just didn't
I was
agree
actually,
with
but I didn't like bookkeeping or accounting and profits and costs.
Does anyone like that? I don't know.
Yeah, so I cared about organization, management, strategy and marketing, and mostly all the side courses like psychology, so all those different disciplines.
So from that early times at Erasmus, you knew you wanted something different than was being offered.
Yeah.
It wasn't the core course.
Actually, it's funny because I was more interested in the emerging stuff already back then, like Gary Hamel, for example, in 1993. He was lesser known, and I loved his presentation at Erasmus. But everybody was talking about Michael Porter, and he's the framework, blah, 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 and the guru. Then I said, okay, no, this is much better. And then he became the new standard, right, over time, Hamel and Prahlad. But so I was always looking for the edges in my study.
Well, you said you did some psychology. What does this say about you? Sorry,
Yeah,
that's a horrid question. I do apologize.
I guess I'm an explorer, right? So people call me an infanterist in Dutch, so on the edges, looking for new weak signals, what's coming our way. Yeah.
But after Erasmus, it's nice to be on the edge, but I'm guessing there was a need for money, so you did have to go into that wonderful world of work.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the flower auctions this time.
Yeah. So at first I was a university teacher for 1 year to teach third grade or business economics students in work college. That was great on innovation management for 1 year.
Things you believed in, or Michael Porter?
I believed in myself. Based on my thesis, I had a 9 out of 10 for my thesis. So they said, okay, want to become a PhD? I said, no, I don't want that. You can become a university teacher. I accepted that. And I could teach about my own thesis to our students. So that was great stuff. Yeah.
So there was an agenda from a very early time within Erasmus.
Yeah. And then afterwards, but I didn't like to be at the university for a long time because it's very individualistic. So I said, okay, I go to a corporate. I went to Compaq, HP, had a good experience there. I started there online marketing, so it's 97, 98.
Yeah.
98, yeah. And then...
What is a good experience? That the coffee was reasonable, or that the opportunities were great?
Compaq was a great company back then. Very decentralized, fast-paced, American, content-based, less political back then. So I had a lot of freedom to innovate. I did an e-commerce plan for the whole organization with a team, of course, from the ground up, online marketing. So that was great.
So an entrepreneur before the word was invented.
Yes. I worked really hard for this company. Yeah, long nights also.
Long nights,
Yeah.
and was there a future within this company, or was there a time that came where it was almost time to move on?
Yeah, I recall I was fed up with the slow process in terms of promotion. So in a corporation, you're mostly boxed into a sort of system, right? Salaries, blah, blah. So it was not fast-paced enough for me. I wanted more. I wanted more diversity, more learning. I was eager to learn.
So what was the next stage after that?
I went to Add Value Ardenne. It's a creative agency or online media agency. The first one in Holland. So that was a great time as well. Yeah.
So your creativity came out to play there.
Yeah, so because in a corporate it's more about power and budgets and implementation. So follow through, and that's fun. But an agency is more content-based, even more so than, let's say, a corporate. So it's all about creativity and about new ideas. That's more my thing. Yeah.
But with that creativity tends to come some egos as well. So
Yes,
how
that's
did
true.
you manage that? Because the corporate structure, hierarchical, everyone knows their place, they gave you some freedom, you were able to achieve. In that creative environment, maybe there were a few egos that were touching and things were a little different.
Yeah, but it's more flat. So I had a quite interesting role there. I was managing managing consultants. So I had to set up a whole team. So that was a new experience for me as a manager. And so it felt like entrepreneurial, managerial, and content-based at the same time. So I liked it, but I had a lot of freedom there. So more so than, let's say, compact.
And what did you do with this freedom? What was your greatest accomplishment while you were there?
Build up a team, a good team, delivery of good projects for Dell or Postbank or so different clients.
So really working for some of the larger companies.
I remember that we had a great campaign with Google AdWords. It just was launched in Holland a year after the US. So we embraced it fully, of course. We got innovative. So we had amazing results. For example, back then you could have a cost per click or visitor for, let's say, 5 €.
Yeah.
Imagine that for Dell. So
there was no competition at the time.
That was amazing. Now it's like 100x at least.
But from there, you started to enjoy working for other corporates and to come up with different concepts. Where did it end in this phase that you moved on to say, I want to have my own company, I want to do it for myself?
Yeah, so I had different experiences with the different organizations, also with Nuon and Media Cable. And so after a while, I realized, okay, I want more freedom. I want to be in charge of my own destiny, not just asking permission all the time. And in most cases, I was a pain in the ass for a manager because I was so way too much into the future, too visionary. And
I'm seeing a few people here smiling, so I guess there are a few people that might share those tendencies.
So they couldn't put me into a box. I was constantly out of the box, and yeah.
And you didn't like being put back in that box?
No, I really didn't like it. Yeah.
So what was the final straw that broke the camel's back, where you said, okay, it's time now, I can't do this anymore? Yeah,
that's a funny story. So in 2007, I was working for Nuon. I was responsible for all digital media in retail and corporate. So also for a new website. It was a big project, let's say 18 months. I was responsible, €1.5 million. A lot of stakeholders and blah, blah. It's a classic waterfall project. And I really hated Prince 2,
yes.
Classic sequential. Why? Because I love the project and I'm passionate about the internet, about the content. So what happens in that system that you cannot iterate like Lean Startup or Agile and Scrum, right? So I had a conflict at the end of the project with the key project manager because this person was focusing, let's say, on process instead of content. And so it blew up. I got fired, and then I decided, okay, I will do it my own way from now on. It doesn't make sense any longer, this whole thing.
So back then, I'm guessing iteration was really quite a new concept because people liked Prince 2.
Yeah.
No one ever got fired for imposing Prince 2 on their organization. But you had this concept of iteration, some new theory. You had your thesis that you were still trying to push the ideas of. How did you take that forward to engage with either business or with the government to create a customer base? Because you can speak your message all you want, but someone has to buy it to pay for the bottom line.
Yeah, so what happened is it was a funny or interesting period because in March 2007 I got involved with Twitter, one of the first 100 people in Holland. And it was an amazing community feeling there, with amazing people. Let's Ima Bosma, Boris Veldhuizen van Zandt, and Marco Derksen, etc. So Raymond van der Klein, Maarten Lens Fitzgerald. So there was an amazing vibe there. And also we saw the launch of the iPhone and the Nokia N95. So we started Mobile Monday in April 2007, and it was a big success. So it made it more easy for me to step into being an entrepreneur and to get assignments, basically via the network. I had a good personal network built up in the last 10 years. So that helped, and it was a good time to be an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Were you ready to give advice to those companies that you were consulting with?
Yeah, because I'm very much focused on content and innovation all the time in the last, let's say, 20 years before. So that paid out in the sense of, okay, you know what you're talking about, you have the credibility, blah, blah, and experience, so you can make it happen.
So who was the first customer?
The
first paying customer,
yeah.
Who should be?
That's called Direct Wonen. I did a big project there it's a funny story. It's a very disruptive organization. So I set up the online marketing for the different mortgages and different products in the company, and also introduce them into Web 2.0, the social media part. So that was a good project to do for, let's say, 9 months, almost full time. Yeah.
Okay, so 9 months was where you started.
Yeah.
You went in, it was almost an interim position to turn around the organization, design it. What was the impact on that organization to date? Let's face it, we're now in times where consultants move on very quickly, but you've had time to reflect, and so have they. What changes stuck, and what if they let go? Yeah,
good question. So they got basically screwed up by the financial crisis. So that's the big game changer for every financial organization, services company. So we set up a few new landing pages, the online marketing mix 1.0 and 2.0. So, and I think they are still using those, yeah. So it was a big upgrade of the whole online marketing mix for them. Yeah.
And you moved from that organization into different sectors.
Yeah.
Where was your passion at this point? Because when
basically mobile. Mobile, but also Singularity already. I knew about Singularity from 2001, as I told you before. So it was a mix of online, mobile, social, but also the next step beyond that, let's say, sensors and mHealth and Singularity. Yeah.
Well, you know, we're using the word singularity, but I think we have an audience of people that are saying, what is singularity? We could ask them, but I think it's better to ask you.
Yeah.
Can you give us a simple definition of singularity?
So it's basically the combination and the convergence of different exponential technologies, like the combination of biotech, nanotech, neurotech, AI, robotics, drones, 3D printing, 4D printing, sensors, and solar energy. And all these fields are growing exponentially. And if you combine them, you have radical solutions to big societal problems, like water, food, energy, healthcare, education, climate change. Yeah.
So this is a movement, a sort of world singularity movement, and you're one of the principal players in it. Yeah. How did that start? Because you said you did have that interest in singularity before, but it had to manifest itself somewhere.
Yeah, what happened is, I heard about Ray Kurzweil, let's say 10, 15 years ago. I blogged about it 9 years ago. It's still live, actually. So I rolled into his work from Werner Vinci and Ray Kurzweil. I made the decision intuitively to go to the Singularity Summit in 2008. There were Peter Diamandis there, Ray Kurzweil, Werner Vinci, everybody was there, so I was totally blown away by the content. And then Singularity University was announced already at that event, a stealth mode, so to speak. So I made a decision, okay, I gotta go there. It's very instinctively.
And what is the Singularity University?
Yeah, so,
it's non-accredited. That much we should share.
That's true. It's more like a think tank instead of university, classic university. So it's driven by NASA, Google, Cisco, Autodesk, and the Kaufman Foundation and Genentech. and Deloitte, and it's founded by Ray Kurzweil, Peter Diamandis, and also Larry Page, the CEO of Google, 6 years ago. The goal is to educate young and current leaders to help transform the world using exponential technologies. So basically, they create startups to impact 1 billion people in the next 10 years. That's the key goal. So they are very entrepreneurial, hands-on, doing it.
So it's entrepreneurial, but there is the agenda of making
Yes.
this planet a better place
Yes.
for all of its citizens.
Yeah.
But you mentioned exponential organization or exponential technologies. What is an exponential technology?
Yeah, an exponential technology is basically a technology that grows in capacity, let's say, every 18 months, sometimes slower, sometimes faster. Let's say solar energy grows slower than, let's say, Moore's law, IT or sensors. And drones, they develop, or biotech, they develop more rapidly than Moore's law. So on average, let's say, a doubling of capacity every 18 months, or lowering in cost by half every 18 months if you look at the same capacity. Everybody knows about Moore's law. Moore's law is impacting all these technologies in more or less degrees. So, for example, IT doubles in capacity, storage power, bandwidth, processing power. The same is now happening to a certain degree in solar energy, in bioinformatics, in nanotechnology, neurotechnology. They all become information enabled, so they become more exponential over time. So leading to radical disruptions.
So some people have said that we've had, with the internet, a massive boom of new technologies and new opportunity. A number have said maybe we've come to the end of that. Right. You're completely disagreeing on that, that the big boom is still to come.
Yeah.
That the growth will be based on that.
Yeah, but basically, if you look at the last 20 years, we have disrupted the media, telecom, software businesses, retail to a certain degree, e-commerce. The same will happen in the remaining, the complementary vertical markets. For example, finance is being disrupted right now, banking, insurance, healthcare is being disrupted soon, education is being disrupted, automotive, even construction, mining, energy.
What does that mean for everyone here? A disrupted market?
It's going to be a lot of interesting threats and opportunities.
Interesting could be used in many ways. I'd like to push you on it. What does that mean?
Now, let's take a practical example. If you are, let's say, a bank, let's say ABN AMRO, you have different individual services as a bank. Lending, investing, mortgages, payments, the whole thing, right? All these services are being disrupted today by individual exponential startups with no legacy, inertia, and sunk costs. So, for example, you have Kickstarter, you have Lending Club, you have Bitcoin, blah, blah. So these startups will double every year, sometimes even way faster. For example, crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo will become a $100 billion market in the next 10 years, according to World Bank, probably even 200 billion.
Yeah.
That's 4 times the amount of money in the VC market globally, total. So that means if you are a bank, you have to answer this movement, crowdfunding, be involved. The point is, if those startups merge with each other over time, let's say you have Kickstarter merging with Lending Club, merging with Bitcoin, merging with, then you have a totally new bank that's 100 times cheaper, more personalized, more agile than a classic bank.
But
so
it's still becoming a new bank.
Yeah, it's totally new bank, totally new, with more algorithms, less real estate, less people. It's more scalable. It becomes more of a platform like Airbnb and Uber, multi-sided platform.
But does that then create a new opportunity for new small entrepreneurs to challenge this new player in the market?
Yeah, there will be continuous disruption. Like Uber and Airbnb can also be disrupted today. It can be hard because of network effects and lock-in, but it will be an interesting time because there will be a lot of continuous disruption. Why? Let's assume you have 100 sub-technologies all becoming more mainstream in the next 5 to 10 years. So you can recombine all those building blocks into new products and services and organizations. And this will intensify in the next decades. It won't stop. This is the new normal.
But I guess we we've seen here with technologies like Uber coming in, and a whole group of people that thought they had a future, our taxi drivers, being challenged. Jobs are going to be lost because of the disruption of markets. Now, as much as we don't like bankers very much, some bankers are going to lose their jobs as well with the creation of these new technologies. So is disruption always a force for good?
I would say in the end, hopefully yes. It's not sure. It's about creative destruction, Schumpeter, like all in history. So it creates more wealth, more health, more societal benefits. If you are an individual entrepreneur or employee, you might be disrupted. So you have to be resilient, to re-educate yourself continuously, like everybody has to do, including myself and my kids. It's a new world. You cannot think, okay, I have my certificate, I can take it easy. It's continuous education and learning for everybody.
So the individuals themselves will have to behave differently within organizations.
Everybody becomes an entrepreneur or intrapreneur. Whatever the role you have, like the startup of you, like Reid Hoffman, that's going to happen. So you see a sort of atomization of entrepreneurship. It will spread across society, and I think that's a good thing. And I think young people, for example, millennials, are much more entrepreneurial than, let's say, my generation.
Why do you think they are more entrepreneurial?
It's basically, it's also part of the book, right, the Exponential Organizations. So if you grow up, like my kids, as a digital native, you learn about internet and about gaming. In both media, you learn to be the master of your own destiny. You follow your own passion, your intrinsic motivation. So that means you become more entrepreneurial as a result of that. It's a totally different mindset. You have a different conditioning when you grow up.
But are we not in a time where youth is seen to be apathetic over causes, that they're so comfortable with their iPhone that they don't go out and demand change? That they might be master of their own destiny, but that destiny might be to sit on the sofa and enjoy what parents are providing for them.
Could be, to a certain degree. I think you have a point.
I'm hearing a few titters in the audience, and some people obviously agree with that view.
Yeah, seems to resonate. Yeah, it all depends. Maybe I'm skewed towards seeing the young people that are very entrepreneurial or eager, ambitious. Could be. But if you look at the recent studies, for example, in Holland and books, Einstein generation, the grenzeloze generatie, Generatie Z, Generation Z. So there seems to be a pattern. So the youngsters increase in size that are very entrepreneurial. Also at the university level, you see a doubling or tripling of people that want to create startups or doing it. So I think it's changing slowly.
And you mentioned the book, and the book is very important because it takes together a lot of what you were discussing at the Singularity University. You worked together with a number of the faculty members there as co-authors. You also admitted a little bit earlier that maybe it was a little too scientific in the beginning, but you found a very good writer that made it accessible. So what is the impact of the book now?
The impact is great, so we are very happy. It's launched a month ago. It's the best business book of the year by Frost & Sullivan, so that's great. We're happy about that.
Maybe we should have a round of applause for that best business book of the year.
Thank you.
A little audience participation is always good.
Always good, yeah. So yeah, it's the #2 book right now in corporate America. So above key leading books by Anna McAfee, for example. That's interesting. So yeah, we are very happy about the response. Also at Amazon, it's an Amazon bestseller for the last 4 months now. Also in pre-order phase, in startups, business management, and innovation. But most importantly, what's key to me is that people who have read the book completely, they are very, very excited. They give it the 5-star all the way. Yeah. So that's great.
I'm sure most of our audience have read it, but maybe 1 or 2 have not.
So
it would be good to get a small synopsis.
Yeah. So it's basically, so if the environment is growing exponentially, changing exponentially, how can you organize for that as an organization or as an individual or a team as a startup? Because we are trained to think in linear terms, not exponential. Also, our organizations are linear based on the last, let's say, the last 150 years. and a totally different environment, more stable, predictable, etc., industrial. Now we have to rethink every building block of an organization. That means we have to rethink vision, mission, strategy, organizational structure, culture, processes, KPIs, people, systems, everything. So that's a big game changer. There's a totally new animal emerging, like exponential organization, that is the opposite from a classic organization in every way imaginable. That's a fundamental systemic shift.
Can you sketch out one of these organizations that fit your new...
Yeah, sure. So if you look, for example, at Waze or Airbnb, Uber, or Quirky, GitHub, those are totally decentralized organizations, or mostly self-organizing teams. They are more open than closed, more network-based instead of hierarchical, more about access instead of ownership. They are multi-sided platforms instead of large corporations. They have a more open ecosystem with these hackers, developers, fans, users, knowledge institutes. They are open platform with open API, sharing data, create hackathons to in-source innovation, community management. They have a higher usage of algorithms to automate processes and to personalize products and services relative to, let's say, a classic organization. So it's more AI driven.
Yeah.
So it's a totally new way to look at your organization internally and externally, both.
But are all these organizations sort of going back to Schumpeter's Gale of creative destruction? Is this the destruction he was talking about? That you take on a market, you disrupt it completely, and you bring people over because it's such a different approach to the market, either cheaper or more intelligent, that people will adopt?
Yeah, true. So we define an exponential organization as an organization that is 10x at least more efficient, effective, and faster than a classic linear organization. And the way they do it, they embrace exponential technologies in the products and services in the internal organization, let's say AI, for example, algorithms. But they also use new organizational techniques like holacracy, lean startup.
Help me here, holacracy?
Okay, yeah, holacracy is a new organizational model. It started, let's say, a year ago or something, 2 years ago maybe. It's a new way to organize work, not around people or job roles and job descriptions fixed, but around work itself. So people are more fluid, adaptive, more they can follow their own interests instead of being boxed in a certain job role. So what you have a purposeful organization. You are accountable, but you don't have fixed roles and responsibilities. You can navigate the internal organization and your work more from the inside out instead of outside in with a manager. So it's more self-organizing, more fluid.
Are people capable of doing that?
Yes. The funny thing is, based on your previous question, younger people are much more intrinsically motivated. They are master of their own universe and destiny. So they want to create their own projects or select their own projects to be involved in and to leave it when they are gone, when they are not motivated any longer.
They move on.
Yeah, like GitHub, for example. You come in, you get selected by HRM departments and the CEO on passion, purpose, and potential, not your track record. It's a totally new way to select people. You come in and you can do your own thing. You determine for yourself what you're going to do. And the same is happening in most of these startups. That's amazing.
It's amazing, but it's a little scary, I think, for the corporate world.
Yeah, exactly. And it scales up until 1,500 people, like Zappos right now at Amazon, or ING Direct. It's a big classic financial company. Or Valve, the gaming software company. 400 employees. They are totally self-directed. Or Supercell in Europe, same story.
But how many of them are self-directed, and how many of them it's just a whitewash the organization wishes to paint that it's a modern organization with a different view? Because hierarchies don't tend to fade away very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. Of course, there's something left there. It's a little bit of a sales story. But it's a big shift. For example, also in Haier, a Chinese company, white goods, they had 80,000 employees a few years ago. They changed it into 2,000 individual startups in the corporate structure. eliminated middle management, many startups in their own corporate structure. So autonomy, decentralization of authority, it worked. They doubled their market cap, they tripled their market cap in the last 3 years, from 20 to 60 billion. Amazing. Why? Because it's decentralized structure. They own P&L responsibility, customer focus, small teams, can be more agile, and it works in a large corporate.
If we were to take a company like KPN, like the national telephone company, it could be in any country, how would you apply your thoughts that you've got in the book to change that organization to something that might be more successful and more customer driven?
Yeah. So you cannot change a large corporate like Hire in every case, right? Because it depends on your products, etc., and the capital intensity. So KPN, I would suggest, okay, let's create startups on the edges of the organization. Small teams using lean startup, let them compete in a healthy way. See what works, scale it up, make it independent, report to the CEO, not the CFO, not the middle management because they will kill it or they misunderstand it because they have their own KPIs and their own interests. And they want to keep the best employees for themselves. So independent, long-term KPIs, supported by the CEO.
Everyone a vice president.
Yeah, and that works, right? Because, for example, a great story by GE, the CEO Immelt, he's a great leader, a visionary guy. He embraced lean startup 18 months ago. A lot of key initiatives on the side of the organization, very successful. 40,000 employees embraced lean startup, 300 pilot projects, not all successful, it comes with the territory of course, but a few of those pilot projects already had saved millions of US dollars. Why? Because he supported it. He said this is the future, long-term commitment, communicating this all the time, and stand to it, stick to it.
So is it going all the way back to the iteration that you started with, that people should be allowed to fail, to learn from it, and to come back again?
That's part of the lean startup, right? So you have failure awards, like in Procter & Gamble or Tata. So you get an award if you fail.
So if you fail spectacularly, the award's even better.
Yes.
But I hope you have to learn something from that
Exactly.
failure. Yeah.
Of course, within ethical and legal restraints, but that's the mindset that we need, right? Or Amazon. If you are my manager at Amazon, and I'm your employee, I have a great idea, I want to innovate, you have to, if you say no, you have to write a 2-pager to explain why you don't believe in it.
Yeah. So I have to justify my choice.
Yes, and so you flip around the whole model, right? Makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And how many organizations do you think are going to move to this model in the next 10 years here in the Netherlands? Let's just be very jingoistic.
I think it will be embraced slowly at first and then quickly afterwards. Why? Because of the bandwagon effect, the competition, the heat will intensify because of the pressure of competition in many ways, from the startups, from China, from the big players from Silicon Valley coming in their vertical market. For example, if you are into healthcare right now in Holland, and you ignore Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon, you are in big danger because they're all moving into your space, and they're going to eat your lunch slowly over time. So you have to innovate. So the pressure will intensify from the 3 fields movements at the same time. So that means that people will embrace these techniques and new models.
Can you think of 3 companies that won't exist in 3 years' time because of this movement? That you would just predict would be in danger? Let's not have a court case over this.
Okay, so I would say if you deliver unhealthy food or drinks, you are in deep, deep trouble in the next 5 years. Why? Probably in the next few weeks I get a device, a SKIO, consumer physics, you also have TELSPEC, in which I can detect the content of any drink or food. Vitamins, minerals, allergens, toxins, calories, the whole thing. So if you deliver something unhealthy, you're in trouble. So in the supermarkets, as a manufacturer, the whole food market will become open and transparent. The whole value chain, the whole thing. So that means big disruption there.
But do you see the the customer, and I'm looking out into our fine audience here, is a rational customer? Did they actually care what's in the drink, or do they just associate their Coca-Cola with Santa Claus and drink it nevertheless?
True. That's true, to a certain degree. I think people will become more aware. For example, if you go to a supermarket, some products are being branded like this is healthy for you. It's not healthy. It's not the pure ingredients, for example. It's concentrates, for example. Doesn't have any beneficial effect.
Or low fat but hideously high in sugar.
Yeah. So, or exactly. Or you have bad substitutes like diet variants. So people will become more aware. So if you offer unhealthy foods, you are in trouble. If you are operating into finance today, there will be a lot of competition, not only from Bitcoin and maybe Alibaba offering Bitcoin soon, or maybe Google. So there will be a lot of disruption there as well.
One of the things that you've mentioned a bit there is health.
Yeah.
And you're a triple alumnus of the Singularity University. And one of the areas you went into is healthcare. Why did that become such a passion for you? I mean, I'm also just about to hit 40. Was that the golden moment that opened that you said, body's falling apart, need to do something?
It was mainly driven by my personal experiences. So I had a few close cancer cases in my personal environment, let's put it this way. So that changed my worldview to become more into healthcare. And I noticed that there's so much change to be applied there. It's just incredible. The whole system is outdated, almost everything. Because if you think about it, healthcare is about access, prevention, diagnostics, treatment, compliance, monitoring, and behavioral change, and then the feedback loop back. So all these steps can be digitized. So if you look at Holland, for example, you have a 80 billion healthcare market every year. I made some calculations. If you apply all these technologies, the exponential technologies, you probably can halve those costs. More preventative medicine instead of corrective, more personalized instead of generic. You can lower the cost. You can skip a lot of job roles there, make it more AI-driven, like IBM Watson. For example, you have quantified self, sensor devices. People will become the CEO of their own health increasingly. So you can lower the cost there. You have continuous monitoring instead of just go to a general practitioner once a year. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't know all your data points all the time. So it becomes much more granular, more effective, more efficient, more personalized. So you can lower the cost, increase a lot of chronic diseases, or lower the decrease, sorry. So the whole system doesn't make any sense from my point of view, or Singularity University, or Exponential Medicine, it's called.
I suppose because you're reinventing the wheel, but without any of the legacy. You start with a completely blank sheet and say, how do we come up with a solution for this problem?
It's the same with music, right? Or with TV, or telecom, or retail. Why do we need all those shops? Doesn't make any sense.
But where are all the people going to work in your new society? Because every time I hear one of these new disruptions coming in, I'm seeing people out there losing their positions.
Yeah.
Where is everyone in this new society where things are cheaper, exponential?
Yeah.
Is it people-less?
No. So what will happen in my view, or in our view, is that there will be a lot of new jobs. Just like, let's say, 100 years ago with the Industrial Revolution. So jobs related to biotech and AI and robotics, blah, blah. Maybe not enough to overcompensate the job losses, because half of the jobs will be gone in the next 20 years, especially in logistics, retail, transport, and office jobs, because of AI and industrial robots, basically. So that's a big loss. It will be compensated by new jobs to a certain degree, but we will move into a totally different society over time. We go from scarcity to abundance. So money becomes redefined. It doesn't make any sense if you live in abundance. And we're moving in that way in the next decades, in my conviction. Because technology basically is a tool to make something that's scarce into something that's more abundant. If you think about it. So what's going to happen is that everybody will have a sort of basic income, just like it's happening in Swiss right now in the next 2 years. There's negative income tax. It will be implemented there as a pilot. We can learn from that in Holland. I think that's the only way to move forward. So you have a basic income for your basic needs, and this will be rolled out globally over time, slowly. It will be embraced first for smaller countries because of the ease of use to implement it, relative to, let's say, the United States or China. So I'm a strong believer in that model. So right now we are very concerned and afraid, technology and unemployment and social inequality. That's a valid concern, but it's outdated because the solutions are already here, right? So it's a matter of implementation.
I guess, we discussed a little bit of Piketty earlier.
Yeah.
But we're now at one of the greatest times of inequality of
Yes,
income
true, yeah.
in our recent history. Is this not just going to increase that inequality and lead to an even bigger underclass or a more unequal underclass? Because historically, if you look at the haves and the have-nots, there's always been about a third of any population that falls below a certain level. So even with our previous revolutions where new technologies came up, there has always been a portion of the population that didn't quite have as much. There as a lesson to anyone that didn't work hard. Probably the way that your parents were inspired to send you into the flower market. What's changed in your world that we're no longer going to have that third of the population without, that have no needs?
So I've been involved with Singularity for the last 10 years, and Singularity University the last 5 years. So I realized, being involved in this movement or think tank, that we are moving into a world of not of haves and have-nots, but of super haves and haves. So the bar will be raised. Why? Because of the stuff, we move into abundance, we have a basic income level, the wealth and health will increase because of technology. If you look at the last 100 years, for example, we had a huge progress, has been substantiated by big thinkers and authors like Matt Ridley, Steven Pinker, less violence, more income growth, less poverty on a global level.
But more obesity.
Yeah, more inequality, that's true. But the point is, it's probably a temporary phenomenon. Just like, let's say, Industrial Revolution did the same thing, right? You had a big gap increasing at first, let's say the first 30 to 50 years, and then the gap narrowed again. The same will happen this time, but quicker. So the next 20 years will be very disruptive on a societal level. It will be a rebalancing of roles and responsibilities of government, business, and citizens. More towards citizens, more responsibility, do-it-yourself movement, do it together, the sharing economy, peer-to-peer movement will intensify. So we will do more stuff ourselves on the local level, neighborhood level, do-it-yourself energy, do-it-yourself healthcare, do-it-yourself education, do-it-yourself real estate. You can print your house soon, 3D print, do-it-yourself basically anything, except for a few things that the government still needs to do, right? Let's say security, defense, particular responsibilities in healthcare, education, and the basic income level.
This almost seems like a socialist view, in a way.
It is to a certain degree.
Everyone has a basic income, that people are, there is no want. But what I can see is that you said there will be a small increase in inequality. In times where there's an increase in inequality, there tends to be civil strife and conflict.
Yeah.
Is that something that we have to look forward to before we make that great leap forward?
I think that's a very plausible scenario, also at Singularity University. So we expect there will be some conflicts because some people, stakeholders, will lose power. Let's say a government that become smaller, less impactful because we will do more stuff ourselves as citizens or consumers. So there's a big shift towards, power shift towards consumers and citizens going on. Use your own data, anonymous, Snowden, do-it-yourself movement, maker movement, the sharing economy. These are all converging. Bitcoin is also a part of that. I think long-term we are moving to a more decentralized economy and society and organizational model. It's also known as, for example, distributed autonomous organization, DAOs. That's basically the long-term view of exponential organizations. So we'll probably end up there, in which you can decentralize trust. And normally we have all kind of institutes, like a bank or a registry or lawyers to centralize trust, right? But now, using the blockchain or ledger in Bitcoin, we can, for the first time ever, decentralize trust. That means...
Can you explain that a
Yeah,
little,
so-
how that would work?
So, for example, now, let's say in human history, we needed central institutes to organize trust, to make society work, basically.
Because men are born evil and we need trust to bind us
But
together.
right now, let's think about Bitcoin. We can do it among ourselves. First with payments, that's only a starting point. We can also decentralize, let's say, Spotify or Netflix or voting systems or basically anything. We can capture any physical or virtual or financial product or service, connect it to the blockchain, to a peer-to-peer decentralized trust system, so you have a full decentralized society and economy going forward. That's a real scenario.
The connecting
Yes.
mechanism.
Yeah, but it's more. The funny thing is, if you look at the big privacy and security cases in the last 5 years, for example, Target, or in which cases where hackers destroyed privacy for consumers or customers. That's because it's a centralized system. You have one server or a few servers that can be hacked, the denial of service attacks. But if you decentralize it, like Bitcoin, the blockchain, it's a decentralized model. It's harder to attack it. It's more secure.
But Bitcoin has had its failures as well. The underlying technology hasn't supported it.
Yeah, but
so a stable currency that we see around the world, which is there, has been replaced by something that's inherently more unstable.
yeah, that's for now. I think that's because it's still quite new. It's early diseases to be overcome, just like the internet, let's say 20 years ago. So I expect that the blockchain will become very, very important over time, just like the key VCs in Silicon Valley are thinking about this. This week we had an investment of 21 million US dollars in Blockstream. It's a key enabler for this vision. And we also have Ethereum and those companies that will become very key, in my view, long term. I'm talking about the next 10 to 20 years, let's put it this way.
So well, if we look at this role, because I mean, right now, you've got a vision of a decentralized individual working together in trust relations using an infrastructure that's largely internet-based or technology-based, a world where people are working in different kinds of jobs. I mean, I guess it goes back to that old saying that maybe the people born today, 80% of them will be doing jobs that we don't know about at this point. What can a government do to be on the right side of this revolution? Or should they be on the right side of it? Who drives this? Is it government? Is it commerce? Is it the citizen?
Actually, it's mainly the citizen, also in Holland. For example, there's a big groundswell in do-it-yourself initiatives for solar energy, do-it-yourself energy, in healthcare, in education, Operation Education, for example. Jan Rotmans, Daan Rozengaarde, these are all protagonists of the do-it-yourself, bottom-up self-organizing systems and solutions. This will intensify over time, and they will influence governments and businesses, corporates, to change as well. Slowly, probably, but it will happen. The same is happening in every country across the world, in particular in different paces. But so it will be from the ground up, bottom up, not top down. And the reason is because people have to reduce their power to a certain degree.
So
it's not easy.
In this new world of the super haves and the haves, is there a group that will still be have-nots? A small group that we look to point at and say, they don't participate, they're not part of this new society?
There always will be, right? So it's all a matter of degree. If you give people abundance and all the tools and technologies, they still need passion and curiosity to stay meaningful to themselves, right? What is the meaning of your life? If you don't have any energy to be entrepreneurial or cultural or whatever, artistic, doesn't make any sense, even in a world of abundance. So that will still be the case in some cases if people are not motivated to do anything, right? So, but I think the world on a net basis will become more interesting for more people over time, with less insecurities, more ways to express themselves in whatever the form. and to be more happy and to fulfill their own dreams and purpose in life. It will become easier to do that because you have a different way to survive. You have less survival instinct because there's more abundance. You have a basic income. So you can focus in a more relaxed way in your key goal in life.
Well, if I look out, I see a lot of people who have been listening very intently, some of whom are now worrying about their futures. If you could give just 2 pieces of advice for those that are entrepreneurially inclined and those that just don't have it in them, what piece of advice would you give to both sets? Because let's face it, not everyone's a millennial.
Yeah, so I would suggest every day try to disrupt your own thinking. So see the whole world as one big assumption, including yourself and your own current solutions, right? Let's say you do Lean Startup, okay, what's next? What comes after Lean Startup? If you believe in business model canvas, okay, what's better than this? If you believe in design thinking, how can you improve this? So always ask the question, how can this be done better?
But if I just take someone that's here with a job, they're going to the job every day, when they sit at their desk first thing tomorrow morning at 8:58, because let's face it, no one wants to be in too early, what should be the first thing they do in your future?
You have to learn every day, right? I process information, let's say 4 or 5 hours a day on average. It's a way of being. It is me. I'm just curious and I want to see what's next all the time. So I think this mindset will become more pervasive over time and more a necessity to be on the edge all the time.
Just going to press one more time for a more concrete answer. This gentleman sitting in the front row, what should he do tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock when he gets to the office to protect his own future?
Select the best sources of innovation, like MIT or Singularity University or whatever, Google, and stay updated every day. And also, kill your own darlings. That's the hardest part. I did it myself a few times. So if you are successful in one company or one discipline, kill it, start anew. That's hard. It's not funny, but it's a necessity. There is not a career path. There is not one trick pony any longer. You need to be a successful, serial entrepreneur, intrapreneur yourself. You have to disrupt yourself continuously, every time.
Wonderful. Yuri, it's been an absolute pleasure sitting next to you because the Schumpeter phrase, the gale of creative destruction, I think most people here heard somewhere in an economics course and thought, I don't really get it. Today, you've summed up that phrase and to say, it's our future. It seems like a very scary future.
New normal, yeah.
Where there's a lot of disruption before we get to the utopia on the other side.
Yes, yeah.
I thank you for creating it. You've made me scared and happy in equal measure. And I hope we get to see a little more of you. You're an ambassador of the Singularity University.
Yeah.
So who would you suggest looks at those pages? Because we give you a little time to plug your book at the very end.
Yeah. So Singularity University is basically for everybody who is curious about the future, right? About technology, about innovation, about new organizational models. So it's a cutting edge, basically, or one of the key innovation hotspots in the world. So if you want to explore about robotics or 3D printer or biotech and nanotech and neurotech, you got to be there. So
super.
Yeah, and also about the book. If you would like to explore the new ways that startups are organized, but also corporates, it's probably the book because we synthesize all the key trends in those topics. For example, you have Lean Startup, you have holacracy, you have crowd companies, social business. How can you combine all those trends into one cohesive whole? That's a key challenge. That's the core of the book.
The core of the book. Well, why don't we open up to our audience here? Because I think you've brought up a number of points. The book itself, I'm sure some people have questions on. I'm going to give my microphone away to go into the audience.
Cool.
Questions?
My question is regarding politics a little bit more. There have been quite a surge in a lot of non-democratic political countries, China, Russia, and so on, which are not so keen on innovation or decentralizing everything. What is your take on that? Also, while China and Russia are quite important, militarily, but also with resources and so on?
Yeah, very good question. So, actually, I've been to China a few times. It's very amazing what's happening over there in terms of the pace of change. It's even faster than Silicon Valley. They are number one in a lot of fields already, in biotech and nanotech, Internet of Things worldwide, in solar energy production. So it's moving quite intensely there, fast. So what's happening is that these countries will probably stay centralized. One, to a large degree. Why? Because of the scale and because of their derived goal of stability, historic necessity of stability. So I think the decentralization will pick up more quickly, let's say, in the Western world, let's say in Europe, and probably also to a certain degree in the US, and probably also in the south of the world, especially the smaller countries. What we see right now is that the innovation is more rapidly embraced in the south of the world because of less regulation. In the north of the world, we have FDA for medical innovation, for example, so that's restraining the adoption of particular innovations. So in the south of the world, you see a faster adoption. So to answer your question, I think it's a more nuanced prediction, I would say. It differs by each country. If you have a non-democracy, it will stay more centralized because of the whole system and the history. If you have a democracy, it will probably becomes more decentralized over time in the way I envisioned. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Frans. Thank you. I have a question with regards to our main port here based in Rotterdam, of course, the Port of Rotterdam. What will be the impact of all this on the Port of Rotterdam in the coming decades?
That's a great question. So I was involved with different elements in the mayor in the last 4 years, and also right now. So that was interesting. I shared my perspective there, but I think we have a big challenge because Rotterdam is strong in a few disrupted vertical markets, logistics, 3D printing, nanotechnology, 4D printing is coming our way. So the Port of Rotterdam is being challenged in many ways, by the way, different geopolitical forces and routes. That's one. We are strong in medical. We can intensify this lead, Erasmus Medical Center, but we need to step up in innovation there, biotech, nanotech, neurotech, AI, the whole thing. We are strong in creative industries and architecture and design. We can intensify this using new technologies. We can, petrochemical, that's a big concern to me because a lot of disruption there in bio-based economy. There are many substitutes are coming our way, so the whole industrial thinking in Rotterdam needs to change into more mass customization, more decentralization, more circular economy. We are strong also in water. We need to intensify this strength, water management. So we are in good shape, but we need to step up in Rotterdam the next 5 to 10 years, otherwise we are in big trouble in many ways. So I think it's happening, so I'm optimistic, but it needs to be more be done more quickly than, let's say, Amsterdam or especially Eindhoven. They are much more agile in embracing new technology and singularity. Yeah.
Hi, hello. It's just a bit of a practical question. Is there a minimum team size for having a level playing field for the whole team? And how do you deal with the fact that in a small team there may only be certain people that can actually carry out particular actions? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so in the book we have a full chapter on startups. Let me give you a few nuggets of the way we think about this. It's basically a combination of Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel is thinking, Fred Wilson, and some other thinkers in this space, like Eric Ries and Steve Blank. So it's a combination. So to sum it up, first you have to have a purpose, not just making money, that doesn't make sense. How can you improve the world? Have a very bold, large, ambitious goal. That's step one. That needs to be personal for you as a person. The personal fit of your purpose with the purpose of the organization in startup. That's step one. That's a big game changer. Step two is to build your own community or align with it, already available community, let's say online or offline. The first step is to create a team. We believe in a way to create a team by agrees. So you have discovery people and delivery people, a good mix. Small team, 5 to 8 people maximum. Founding team, mostly 3 people, based on the research by TechCrunch, by Eileen Lee, the Unicorn Club. Mostly people who are 35 years old on average. Most people think that you need to have young people. Those are unique cases, not the generic pattern, right? The best startups, the most successful ones, have a founding team aligned with a key university. Let's say Erasmus, or maybe TU Delft, or a technical university in Eindhoven. So, and then they are very homogeneous at first, let's say in terms of ethnicity, diversity, maybe more male focused, but over time they become much more diverse. More females on board, ethnicities, different skill sets. So it becomes more heterogeneous. It's funny, it's a statistic, because we used to be believed or trained to say, yeah, you need diversity at first, already, from day one as a startup. But the data shows it's the opposite. You need a more homogeneous culture at first, and then over time diversify, let's say after half a year or a year. So, and then afterwards, you have to create an amazing idea, a product idea, a breakthrough idea. So you can think about questions like, okay, Peter Thiel, what do you believe is true, but most people don't agree upon? That's a great question, because you are passionate about it. It's disruptive, because if you can convince everybody that it's a great idea, it doesn't make any sense. It's incremental innovation. Another question is, what would you do as a person if you have $1 billion today? What would you do with your life? Or in other words, what is a key problem that you really are frustrated about, that's personal to you, that you would like to solve? That's a big use case for you as a person. So you will be motivated over time because you are deeply passionate about it. So those are insights in the book that we elaborate over time. Then later on you implement lean startup methodology, you implement our new organizational model. We have 11 attributes of a new organizational form. And you create a community and a platform over time, and you make it happen.
Wow. Question? No? Job, you're the last one.
Yeah.
The youngest.
I didn't even raise my finger. Huh? Yeah. So I was just wondering about the crucial moment you started. And that was the golden handshake moment, I imagine. So how far did it carry you when you left Nuon?
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, basically my life started back then, to be honest. But I didn't realize that at first, because of course I felt insecure and afraid, like every starting entrepreneur or freelancer, whatever. But basically, yeah, I believe in serendipity and synchronicity, so that intensified over time. You start small, and opportunities come your way. You have to be alert and awake to choose the right opportunities, and you take it from there, right? I did TEDx Amsterdam or Monday Amsterdam. I did Quantified Self. I did Lean Startup, brought it to Rotterdam 2.5 years ago. I did Singularity University in the last 5 years. So it's basically a simple accumulation of things that you are passionate about. It's nothing fancy. There's no plan to it. There's not a big strategic plan. There's nothing of this at all. It's to follow your own heart, your own passion, disrupt yourself, kill your own darlings, connect with the right people that inspire you as a person and as a professional all the time, and be very ambitious and try to go to the next step every year. There's nothing special about it. Everybody can do that. Also.
How much did university contribute?
Yeah, good question. I would say, there's a big debate in the US with Peter Thiel ignoring universities, and you have Vivek Vatwa from the Singularity University, who's a protagonist of higher education. I think it brought me a lot in terms of valuable friends, and it trained my mindset to a certain degree. learn to think in a holistic way to a certain degree. But to be honest, in terms of content or models, I probably only use 5% or 10% today, maybe less. So
what would you change if you were a professor again?
it's funny because if you look at the statistics, the half-life of particular business competency today is now 5 years. It used to be 30 years ago. So the pace of change is accelerating, also in terms of the disruption of education and curriculum. So if you study bioinformatics or neuroscience today, when you end your study, half of your content is already outdated. This is intensifying because the pace of change in education is lower than the pace of change in the environment. So if you are a web developer, it's only 1 or 2 years of half-life. So what I would envision is that we have to future-proof education, also Erasmus University, to a very large degree. Not about today or the past, totally envision the future, create the models that will be relevant or competencies for the next 5 to 10 years, not today. Because if you develop for today, when you launch it, it's already outdated. It doesn't make any sense. So that's why Singularity University was started, right? It's more future-oriented, more future-proof, it's more high-level, more generic, focusing on the foundational knowledge instead of the particular specialized expertises. So it's a different way to frame education, more future-proof.
You wouldn't need 4 years anymore and many brick buildings.
I'm not that radical, but I would suggest that there will be consolidation over time towards a AAA level. So let's say if you are Harvard University or Stanford, MIT, you are in good shape, you will consolidate power with your MOOCs and your free online courses, because people will go for excellence. If you are a student, I only would select the best courses in the world. So it becomes a winner-takes-all market also there, just like this last 20 years in media and telecom. So I expect a consolidation or a disruption and bankruptcy of low-end to mid-market universities, higher educational systems. Also in Holland, it will consolidate over time. And those that will stick around will become more qualitative over time, more engaging, focusing on the social, emotional, and physical and spiritual aspects and personal awareness instead of cognitive skills, because you can outsource the technology to the cloud. Doesn't make any sense. So it's about team formation, learning about entrepreneurial skills, international focus, learning to cooperate, self-knowledge, self-awareness, identity. That's going to be key in every higher educational institute over time.